Another game, another win. John Hynes has the Minnesota Wild at 4-0. And folks, another game that looked much like we've seen over the last 4 games as the Wild handle their business and a little bit of a push late to beat the Calgary Flames by a score of 5-2. Let's break it all down on a special After Dark edition of the Locked On Wild POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wild POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Fresh off of yet another Minnesota Wild win as the Wilds beat the Calgary Flames by a score of 5-2. And we are now 4-0 under new head coach John Hynes. And folks, as we get the Locked On Wild POSTCAST started here this evening, a late one because, we're on the West Coast. Just more of the same. Reinforcements of what John Hynes has now called the standard for this Minnesota Wild team. We saw an early lead. We saw the Wild pad that lead early on in the second period. Penalty kill continues to do their thing. The power play looking fantastic, even though they came up empty in a couple of their opportunities. But I think the most encouraging thing that we saw here in this one is it doesn't really matter who this Wild team plays right now on the road or at home. It doesn't matter if the team that they're playing has last changed. The Wild just continue to lay the foundation for how they're going to attack and how they're going to win games here this year. And it's so refreshing to see the differences that this team is bringing to the ice. And it's a lot of the things that just were not working through the first 19 games of the season. The ability to quickly push the puck out of the defensive zone and into the offensive zone led tonight to long stretches in which the Calgary Flames just straight up did not have opportunities on net. Through the first 35 minutes of the game, the Calgary Flames had 10 shots. And yes, they made their push, but that's what you expect from the home team, especially if you get to the point where you are up on them so much that you frustrate the absolute bejesus out of them. And so the push by Calgary at the end was expected. And how did the Wild handle it? When the Flames got it to 4-2, the Wild pushed back and added another goal to make it 5-2. And that was all the scoring that we had. And the Wild essentially played keep away down the stretch. There just is a lot to continue to like about what we've seen for this team through the last 4 games. And tonight, it was what I have called the John Hynes daily double, because it seems like there's somebody new scoring at least 2 goals on a nightly basis. And it was Matt Boldy tonight. And that performance was sorely needed for a guy who just has been unable to find the back of the net. He gets the gorgeous feed from Kirill Kaprizov on the power play, and he's able to tuck another goal as well to just hugely surge his confidence throughout the course of the night. But Kaprizov scoring in this one, Marcus Foligno, a guy who we have been just looking for something from over the past few games, as opposed to simply, being a physical guy out there on the ice. And so he's able to get a goal in this one as well. And you get Joel Eriksson Ek continuing to just be a monster in this one. And I found it really interesting after the game. John Hynes talked about it. It's really the players at this point. The players have bought into what he's trying to do. The players are the ones out there that are executing. And so for Hynes, he hasn't really had to do a ton. Just change the focus for this team and changing it from being this kind of lumbering physical presence that just gets sucked into the defensive zone too much, to now a team that simply looks to quickly flip from the defensive zone to the offensive zone has just created a night and day different product from what we saw early on in the season. And we've seen another goalie now be chased as Dan Vladar, who had an adventure in net for the Calgary Flames. He was chased early on in the second period. This Wild team, we keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it just has not so far in the John Hynes era. So a ton to like in this one, but I want to focus on something that I tweeted out earlier in the night. We, I think, are not talking enough about how good of a season Matt Zuccarello is having. And I know there's frustration with what we have seen from Zuccarello at times because of how pass tendent him and Kirill Kaprizov get when things aren't going well. But Zuccarello is averaging over a point per game. He now has a third double-digit point streak in his Minnesota Wild career. And you look at some of his peripheral numbers, and I'm actually going to do a full episode on this. You look at some of his peripheral numbers at age 36, and they are either reestablishing career highs or they are close to a career high. And let's not overlook what he has been able to do to help get Kirill Kaprizov going and to help continue the impressive start to the season that Marco Rossi has had. That top line has been playing some extremely good games, especially since John Hynes took over. And it seems like Matt Zuccarello is one of those veteran players that has stepped his game up the most since the coaching change happened. Zuccarello's battling for pucks along the boards. He flew in from just in front of the Wild bench when Marco Rossi got hit from behind in front of the Flames net and looked like he wanted to just start ripping some heads off. He has become, I think, one of the stronger leaders on this team as the season has unfolded. And if you're looking at these extensions, I think you put him in the category of one of those that, yeah, maybe you were a little hesitant to give 2 years to a guy that's 36, but he just seems like he's continuing to get better. And so huge props to Matt Zuccarello for his play over these last handful of games. We had the strong momentum going into this game after talking about the Calder Trophy case that was being made for both Brock Faber and Marco Rossi. And those guys respond with even more considerably good play so far here this season. And, you know, we've looked at the minutes disparities so far under John Hynes, and I think we're seeing something that is just going to continue with this team as we go. You look at the lowest minute numbers for Wild players here in this one. Pat Maroon had 10 minutes and 5 seconds. Marcus Foligno had 11:16, and Freddie Gaudreau had 12. Then you go beyond that, Ryan Hartman with 12:43, Brandon Duhaime with 12:53, Connor Dewar with 13:37. And you go up to the top of the list, and the guys that you want to be getting the most minutes, Kirill Kaprizov led the forwards. This is the first time that Kaprizov has led the forwards in the last few games. He had 21:37, but he had a fantastic game. A goal, an assist, 5 shots. He was a +1 and is continuing to look more and more like the guy we had expected to see as this season has unfolded. And so you see Kaprizov get rewarded by having that extended amount of play. Zuccarello with 19 minutes. And then after that, it was Marco Rossi with 17:45. He was third on the team tonight, just ahead of Joel Eriksson Ek at 16:46. Folks, I bring this up because I think it's important to note that having a team, having a system that rewards good play but doesn't just hand people minutes based on where they have been in the lineup, is going to keep everybody hungry to continue to get that additional slice of the pie. And so there's always going to be some fire for this team as long as this continues. There's always going to be some fire for guys on this team to try to up their minute totals from the previous game. Now, a guy that we continue to just want a little more from, Marcus Johansson, he had 13 minutes here tonight. And so John Hynes is finding ways to get the most minutes for the guys that are playing the best, even if they're not on the same line combinations. That is the kind of thing that we just were not seeing with Dean. We were seeing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're seeing John Hynes mix things up a little bit as the game goes on. Some other things to note before we get to your comments, because I see the comment section starting to bubble. We'll make sure to get to them here as we move through the show. But Filip Gustavsson, again, really solid game here tonight. Continues to build off of what he's done over his last few starts. The only goals that were scored by the Calgary Flames were off of deflections. Gustavsson, everything that he was able to get a clean look at, he was able to make saves on. And his positioning has gotten way better since the change. And so I think he has stopped the guessing that kind of gets him in trouble and is just using his instincts and his ability to react quickly to make many more of the saves that this team just wasn't getting early in the season. And just again, let's give some more stick taps for this Minnesota Wild penalty kill. Perfect again. 3 for 3. The Minnesota Wild have allowed one power play goal, and it was on just some weird ping pong bounce. One power play goal for Minnesota Wild opponents since John Hynes took over. Can anybody remember a time at which we had any optimism about the Wild penalty kill before John Hynes took over? I can't. I don't see anybody raising their hands, and so there was no optimism at any point during the start of the season. And so everything has been better. The push has been phenomenal from this team. And again, another encouraging sign tonight is that we saw Calgary push back, but the Minnesota Wild had an answer. Matt Boldy talked about it after the game. He said, we had an answer for everything that they tried to throw at us. And that just has not been something that we've seen from this team so far this year. So a lot of encouraging things to continue to see from this team as we push forward and as we now have won 4 in a row. And these 4 games have been the most enjoyable of the season. Hooray. It continues. It makes things way easier for us to watch and then react to. Because we're seeing consistency over these 4 games. All of these things that have changed, they're just consistently hitting this benchmark that John Hynes has talked about. And it looks like something that, yes, there will be some ups and some downs, but it seems like this is something that they have worked to now be able to achieve on a consistent basis. And so one of the comments that I saw in here is, do the Wilds, dare say, have hope for the rest of the season? We'll talk about that as we continue tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Minnesota Wilds come away with a 5-2 win over the Calgary Flames. We will continue to recap the game. We'll continue to take your comments as we continue tonight's Locked On Wild postcast after this. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/locked on to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Today's Locked On Wild postcast is also brought to you by Game Time. If you enjoy living in the moment, you probably have encountered the same day ticket buying experience, which can be a little mixed. Sometimes the tickets are way too expensive. And worse yet, sometimes you go to, whether it be a sporting event, a concert, or even a comedy show, you go to the event after buying your tickets the day of, and you find that your view is obstructed. Nobody wants to deal with that, especially around the holidays when you're giving tickets out for gifts. So Game Day is here to help make the same day ticket buying experience as stress-free as possible. Game Time offers last-minute tickets, plus most importantly, views from every seat in the venue. Game Time is here to take all of the stress and guesswork out of buying tickets. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. The Minnesota Wilds pick up a fourth straight win as they beat the Calgary Flames by a score of 5-2. And it is comment time. Let's roll through the comments and see what you have to say about tonight's impressive win for the Minnesota Wild. And let's start with some love for the wall. Yes, I'm talking about Jesper Wallstedt, because as we start off with Jeremy mentioning that Wallstedt picking up a lovely win against Rockford tonight. He was 30 out of 31 in save attempts. And we talked about the role that he's been on. He had, I think it was 40 out of 41 and then 43 out of 45 against Colorado over the weekend. And so he continues that role. He's now 9-4 on the season, goals against average of under 2. He knocks on the door, continues to knock. If you want to go the Walter White route, he is the one who knocks and just continues to make his case to be a huge part of what this team is doing. As we'll get him here next year. He'll be a part of the equation next year, but with the goalies back on track up at the NHL level, no need to rush him, as tantalizing as it may be. But huge night for Jesper as he continues to just put up some incredible numbers so far this year. And speaking of incredible numbers, Jay Sullivan, the boys have looked so good the last 4 games. John Hynes is probably never going to lose again. Of course, I say that in jest because barring some just immaculate level course correction for Minnesota sports to where the Wild do end up not losing a game the rest of the season, there are going to be some losses that happen during this Hines tenure. But I think the thing that's been most important to keep in mind is that Hines has come in and he has established the new standard, which is the effort level off the charts and the Wild pushing the tempo, keeping the pace up, and just trying to continually push the puck into the offensive zone, limits the amount of times you get stuck in the defensive zone. The first time it happened was in the third period. And so by that time, the Wild had a 3-goal lead, and it's hard for your opponent to be able to mount any sort of a comeback unless you're Columbus and you just hand out goals like they're candy in the third period. So if the Wilds continue the effort level, if they continue to push and push the puck into the offensive zone, It generates more chances, takes stress off the defense, takes stress off the goalies, and it leads to your opponent making mistakes, which now this Wild power play has shown that they're able to capitalize on. So it's all these little things that come together and just lead to better opportunities to win. And that is the John Hynes experience so far for this Minnesota Wild team. Will, my gosh, Faber is impressive. Am I becoming the president of the Faber fan group? I have not seen anyone lay claim to that position as of yet. And so if you want it, you can take it. You can have the Faber fan group. I see no reason that we can't have everybody create whichever group they like. Obviously, we, Locked On Wild, has laid claim to the Brandon Duhaime fan club. Whatever you want to do, we are fully here for it. Jeremy, piggybacking off of the Faber love, I had that feeling Faber was him after the playoff series in Dallas and then came out to score the first goal of the year. It's a pretty good indicator that a guy is going to have a solid season. And he has run with it ever since getting that first goal of the year. Jay Sullivan, Zook is having one of the best age 36 seasons of all time so far. The Minnesota broadcast showed a stat line, and every other player on this kind of pace at 36 is a Hall of Famer. Now that's interesting. I hadn't pondered the HOF case for Zuccarello. Obviously, within the Minnesota Wild ranks, he continues to just climb the charts in terms of points. He's leading Norwegian-born players in like everything. And so a couple more seasons like this, and it'll be interesting to see what sort of love he gets as things go. And piggybacking off of that, he's getting feisty too. I loved seeing him just go right up to the defense of Marco Rossi after Rossi got shoved from behind. He comes flying in to just restore order, like the parent who sees their kid fighting on the playground and just goes in and is like, okay, I don't care who started it, but I'm going to make sure that this doesn't escalate any further. I've been a huge fan of what we've seen from Zuccarello, especially lately. But again, he's been solid all season. He's just continuing to kind of further that as the season rolls along. Jake, the Minnesota sports fan. So is it safe to say we have hope? I haven't seen this team look this good in a minute. It's finally clicking. And I know there has been a lot of people waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're 4 games into the Hines tenure. As I've said, there are going to be, this team isn't going to go 60-0 or whatever it is now down the stretch. But the thing that is going to make it so that you don't get blown out or that you're able to get back into games is continually doing the things that they have done, which is the effort. The effort was sorely lacking the first 19 games of the season, and the confidence now is back to where this team is just playing with belief that they're going to be able to get it done. They're going to be able to get that early lead, and they're going to be able to hold it. So the belief, the confidence, if they can continue those and just continue to do the little things, this is a team that certainly can get back into the postseason picture with what they've done. Because you look at this stretch of games that they've played. They beat the St. Louis Blues, who were above 500 at the time. They beat a Nashville Predators team that had won 6 games in a row. They beat Chicago, who having an up and down season, but they had Connor Bedard. And you beat a Calgary Flames team that was 6-3-1 coming into the game here tonight. And not only beat them, but convincingly beat them. And so the fact that the Wild have gone from a team that couldn't beat anybody to a team that is currently emphatically winning is a good thing to see for sure. Mateo, that third pairing can be fired into the sun. Let me read you the defensive pairing minutes here in tonight's game, because I actually laughed when I saw how this played out. So Jonas Brodin, 23 minutes, 31 seconds. Brock Faber, 25 minutes, 42 seconds. Jake Middleton, 20 minutes, 18 seconds. Jared Spurgeon, 24 minutes, 14 seconds. John Merrill played 12 minutes, 42 seconds. Alex Goligoski played 9 minutes, 55 seconds in this game. And so Hines, I think, is quick shifting those guys. It seemed to me that we saw the first pairing, we saw the top pairing get time with everybody. I kept looking up and seeing Faber and Brodin playing with the first line. They were playing with the second line, the third line, the fourth line. And so I think what we're seeing is quick shifts for that third pairing. And if John Hynes senses any even remote sense of trouble, quick yank, quick pull back to the bench to restore order to those first two pairings. And so that's another tactical move by John Hynes is let's get this third pairing on maybe to start, but they're not staying on the ice for very long. In particular, get them off the ice, get somebody else on there, get some other set of legs on the ice. Bold prediction from Will, calling it now. Faber gets the A or the C after Spurge is gone. Honestly, I continue to trend closer and closer to this myself because it just seems like everything Brock Faber says is very thought out, very, very well beyond his years. And so I think the fact that he is as outspoken as he is now, as a very young player at the NHL level, I think gives him the edge as to the captaincy when Jared Spurgeon retires or gives it up. Eriksson Ek, I think, is going to factor into the leadership group, but he is much more of a, and it's not that he doesn't, but he's much more of a kind of leader by action as opposed to leader by voice. Faber just screams leader by what I say, who I say it to, how I say it. And so it's not going to surprise me in the slightest if Brock Faber ends up being a future captain for this Minnesota Wild team, because Guerin, John Hynes, anybody in a leadership position for this team cannot love what Faber has done enough. And honestly, it's a fun story to see a guy. The picture of him banging the glass when Kirill scored a goal while he was still with the Gophers is going to be an all-time picture. It should be in a museum. It should be framed at the XL Energy Center, because I think you see the makings of a guy who is going to play a long time in the NHL, and hopefully he's going to play a long time here in Minnesota, because it just that could not be any more fun of a story. And Jeremy alludes to that. Players I want to keep seeing in Minnesota, Mermis, Rossi, Lettieri, get some starts for Patan as well. This is going to be interesting to see how this team handles further adversity with injuries and such, because I think one of the things that I was most intrigued to see was how Ryan Hartman was handled when he came back after the suspension, because Dean did it last year. Hartman was injured. Hartman was healthy scratched. He just went right back up to the top line, and John Hynes this year said, no, you're going to go on the fourth line because opportunities are earned, not given. And he's played two straight games on the fourth line. And honestly, it doesn't show any signs of changing because everybody is playing so well. So I'm fascinated to see how this team's going to handle injuries, because it doesn't seem like Hines does not seem to have any favorites at this point, to where it's like, we really got to make sure that we get him back into the top 6 or onto the top line. Honestly, if you want to look at favorites, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Rossi, Eriksson Ek, and probably Duhaime and Dewar. Those are the guys that seem to be consistently getting the most minutes. And how can you argue with what Kaprizov and Rossi and Zuccarello have done on that top line? How can you argue with splitting them up? You just can't at this point. So I feel like we have a lot more coaching to see from John Hynes, but he hasn't had to do a ton so far because everything's just working. So we'll see how things play out. I do want to highlight a very kind comment from Jay Sullivan. Give this video a like, give this postcast a like. Appreciate everybody giving the love here, because I do this for all of you. I do this for the fans, to keep all of you informed, to keep you entertained. Are you not entertained? Gladiator reference. I do all this for you guys. It's just about midnight. We're still out here having a great time, just going through, taking as much time as needed to get through everybody's comments. This is why we do it, because Wild fans are the best. You deserve an opportunity to be fully invested in this team, like I am. And so this is why we do it. And so a way that you can reciprocate is by liking videos, by subscribing, give us 5-star reviews on Apple or Spotify. Anywhere you want to throw a rating, especially YouTube, that helps get us out there further to allow for further Minnesota Wild fans to be exposed to the show and for them to enjoy as much as you all have. And let's be honest, as much as I have putting this all together. Bob joins us tonight. I'm glad Stump Merrill didn't cost us tonight, i.e. cough up or the statue pylon play where they put him in. Yeah, this is something that bears watching, is how Hines will limit minutes, especially in heavy exposures. And I think we had a ton of quick shifts for Merrill and for Goligoski as well, just to keep them from leading to disastrous goals, and just continuing to lean on that top 4. And honestly, if you are playing more of your time in the offensive zone, you're taking stress off those defensemen, so you can play them a heavier workload of minutes because they're not having to defend as much. They're able to actually step up and help out offensively. So you can ride on those guys a little bit if you keep putting the pressure on in the offensive zone, and then you don't have to play the third pairing hardly at all. It's another piece of the puzzle for John Hynes. Amazing how 2 coaching changes have turned around the seasons for all 3 Minnesota Wild organizational teams. It is funny how it seems to send a ripple effect through the entire organization. And Wallstead continues to pace that Iowa team. The Wilds looking like juggernauts now through these 4 games. It is something that's fun because, you know, it's a tricky situation. It's a tough situation to see a coach get let go. But it seems like everybody has benefited from it to lead to just an incredibly fun last Tuesday on for this Minnesota Wild team since last week. Mateo adding, the Wild are also finally taking the extra second to scan their options rather than pitching a blind muffin to the other team or fumble tucking it. Yeah, and I think this stems from the desire to quickly move up ice. Is John Hynes has talked about this as the season has unfolded, as his tenure has unfolded, is he wants players to get in positions to where it's easier for whoever has the puck to anticipate where they're going to be, or even to find them in those spots to be able to more quickly push them ahead and get into the offensive zone. Stop getting stuck in the defensive zone. Grab the puck. Wild sticks tonight, by the way, just seemed like they were everywhere. creating turnovers off of just, well, frankly, careless play by the Calgary Flames. And every time they did, the Wild were looking to push up ice to get back into the offensive zone. And so if they can continue to do that, and just continue to have options up the ice, as opposed to just chucking it into the middle of the zone or chucking it out of the zone to the neutral zone where it's picked up by the opponent immediately and they can just push right back into the zone. They're playing with a plan and are not playing careless with the puck. We hear in football, the football is the program. Don't fumble it. Well, same thing applies to the hockey puck. Don't carelessly turn it away, because then you're going to have to go right back to work on defense. Nobody wants to play defense. Everybody wants to play offense. Goals sell seats. Goals sell seats. Goals win games. So go play offense, and then you don't have to worry about playing defense. The amount of Wild stick breaks was absurd. It was like 4 sticks in a row at one point, wasn't it? Where it was either getting hit by a puck or a shot that I don't know. They were speculating in the broadcast as to what sort of wood was being used. I would say to not use that kind anymore, and I'm not a huge purveyor of stick woods. So I'm not sure if it's like bats in baseball. Honestly, I don't know. But it did seem like an abnormally high amount of broken sticks here tonight, and that, as an equipment manager, that's got to drive you nuts, because then you have a guy out there with no stick. You're trying to coordinate a time that they can kind of slide over to the bench to grab a new one. It happened a lot in this one tonight. But thankfully, it didn't cost the Wild at any point, because it seemed like early on in the season that would have 100% been something that caused the Wild to lose a game or give up a hideous goal. Would be just a broken stick that ends up, leading to a deflected puck. Who knows? But thankfully, we haven't had to worry about that for a few games. First line chemistry, chef's kiss, just absolutely unreal for this team over these last few games. And it doesn't show any signs of slowing down, because now Kirill Kaprizov is starting to really push that grouping. And when he gets to full I'm him mode, look out, everybody, because that's when you are going to see some fun things from this team. Jay Sullivan, Gus is driving that bus again. Only goals against were tippies. That's okay. Yeah, that's the thing, is he was able to make saves on the ones that he cleanly saw, and he just continues. That's 4 starts in a row in which he has looked really, really good, and just looks like the guy from last year. And he talked about it after he finally helped snap the losing streak, in that ice cream didn't taste good anymore. Folks, if you get to that point, that's miserable. And so glad that Gus is able to enjoy ice cream, which is one of the true delights of American cuisine. Glad he's back to that point, because I can't imagine what that would feel like. And quite frankly, I don't want to. So glad they're back. Mateo, Gaudreau and Johansson can go bye-bye in the offseason. I'm starting to wonder if we are going to see somebody who maybe, and it may not be Foligno, Hartman, or Zuccarello, but honestly, Gaudreau seemed like a Dean guy. And so there may not necessarily be that same allegiance here with Dean gone. And Gaudreau has started to improve a little bit, but I don't know. it's not as though it's impossible to move players with no movement clauses and no trade lists. You just got to go to them first. And it may be at some point during the offseason where they say, look, your guy's not here anymore. We want to get you somewhere where you can, get a new opportunity, maybe play more of a role. Like I said, there's no allegiances for John Hynes so far. And so players may say, well, I was getting 19 minutes a night under Dean. Now I'm getting like 12. I don't know if I necessarily sign up for that. If that would end up leading to some cap space being freed up in the offseason, I'm not going to be upset. And so we'll see who falls into that category, but it's going to be interesting to say how to see how that, if I could talk, to see how that plays out. Mike joining us. What's up, Mike? Okay, I must admit tonight was dominant again. If we roll the Canucks like this, back on the wagon, baby, let's go. We, by the way, are going to have what should be an outrageously fun crossover with the Locked On Canucks guys before Thursday's game. And they sent me the questions list, the topics that we'll be talking about when we record it tomorrow, and it's a doozy. So make sure that you tune in on Thursday when we go crossover with the Locked On Canucks. And if that drops, not entirely sure when they're planning to drop it, so it may drop tomorrow, but we'll make sure to let you know when it does, because that's going to be can't miss with those guys. They're absolutely just a riot. So that should be a lot of fun as we gear up for Thursday's game. Just looking at a few more as we start to wrap up. We're hitting the 42-minute mark for tonight's Locked On Wild postcast, which is that's an all-time high. But hey, it's fun. We're having fun. Why would we go anywhere? So we'll just continue to cycle through till I get to the end of the comments, and we'll see. Taking the NHL team for granted or not seriously enough, and disaster will come to your doorstep. The Wild have now have to be taken very seriously. The notice is pretty much official. Yeah, ask the Calgary Flames how that went tonight, taking the Minnesota Wild a little on the light. They just looked disinterested at points, many points throughout the game, and the Minnesota Wild just pounced on them. They didn't really mount any sort of a push until the third period, and by that point they were down 4-1. And so good luck trying to mount a 3-goal comeback. There have been a few teams that have been able to do it, but it's not a common occurrence. And so the Wild, again, they sensed the push and they said, okay, good for you. We'll just get a goal from Eriksson Ek, and we'll just silence that. So good night. And now it's on to Vancouver. So yeah, you can't take this Wild team lightly like you could the first 19 games of the season. And that is in no small part to the fact that the Wild have the new bench boss. And let's talk about this just a little bit as we continue to scroll through. The Wild have expended. Let's just do spent. The Wild have spent so much momentum this season trying to come back from multi-goal deficits, to where if you are able to rally from a 2-goal deficit to tie the score, you're out of gas. You don't have anything left to try to get the go-ahead goal, and then the team that you're playing takes advantage of that, and they're able to score, and then you end up losing. Now the Wild have been able to seize early momentum so that when these teams that they're playing are trying to mount some sort of a comeback, the Wild have energy in the tank to be able to just say, we'll just score again, and we'll just snuff all of the hope out of the entire system as we go. And so it's just way easier to get an early lead and then use your momentum to push back, as opposed to trying to expend so much to rally and then have to do it again. So the early leads, a pivotal part of what this team's trying to do. Jay Sullivan, how about Rossi looking better every game he plays? He does. He does. It just continues to look more and more impressive as he goes. He's getting to the net. He's playing a huge role in front of the net. He's pushing play. He is mixing it up with people. Joel Eriksson Ek's rubbing off on him. And if even though he's not the tallest of players, the biggest of players, he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. And if he continues that, he could end up being a Joel Eriksson Ek type player. And I mean, I don't have to tell you the implications of how that would play out for this Minnesota Wild team to get two of those guys. Now, yes, he's not the tallest, but again, he doesn't care. He's going to throw his weight around and is going to make life miserable for his opponents. So the fact that he is doing it is just fantastic. Jeremy, some nice shout outs here. Locked On Wild, 4th on my Spotify Wrapped. Love to see it. Love to see it. Love to see you taking advantage of the daily content that we give to you. Also, want this kind of podcast for the Iowa Wild and the Iowa Heartlanders. And this is something I'm trying to add more to the arsenal to be able to do more content covering not only the Iowa Wilds, not only the Iowa Heartlanders, but also the new team that is coming for the PWHL. We're trying to do more with that too. And so I'm going to continue to incorporate all of these things, just trying to come up with a workable plan so that I don't end up just turning into a husk from trying to do all of this at once. But we are laser focused on the Minnesota Wild right now, and we'll continue to keep tabs at the least. We'll continue to keep tabs on Iowa, on the Heartlanders, on the PWHL as well, to try to get. We want to try to encompass. You talk about in college athletics, recruiting and winning and being able to recruit within your home state. That's the ultimate goal of this show, is just to, if something happens in the States, to be able to just report on it effectively and let you know what's going on, no matter who that will be. Because guess what? The college hockey and the high school hockey here in Minnesota are fantastic as well. I want to do stuff on that too. So we're pushing some big things as we continue here, as this team just continues to do some really good things. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on the Minnesota Wild, and most importantly, don't burn yourself out. None of you are going to believe this. I'm going to make a startling admission here as we wrap up tonight's postcast. I do all of this with no caffeine. Let that sink in for a second. No coffee, no energy drinks, water. Yes, flavored water, but still, no caffeine. It's all just sheer will of determination to make it happen. So that I don't know. That maybe makes me look like more insane, but yeah, Will is definitely on the right track. You're insane. Somebody's going to meme this at some point. Yeah, lunatic behavior. But hey, that's why we do this, because this is fun. This is my energy. This is what I enjoy to do. And so we'll just continue to fire it up. Folks, Denny is here. Denny hopping in to enjoy yet another Minnesota Wild win. And we have been having a lot of fun here breaking this one down. 5-2 win. More of the same. More of the same that we've seen from this Minnesota Wild team over the last 4 games. And now we get a chance to see if it continues against Vancouver come Thursday. My prediction, honestly, I have no reason to suggest that it won't. Vancouver is a very tricky team. They're playing some great hockey, but hey, guess what they had happen a couple of seasons ago? They fired their coach. They brought in a new one. They played much better down the stretch with Rick Tocchet than they did with Bruce Boudreau. Now, it didn't lead to a playoff spot for them because they were too far out of it at the point that they made the change. But Tocchet has taken that momentum into this season and has furthered it. And it's a Vancouver team that is built in similar ways, has similar top-level players that just were not getting it done. Goaltending wasn't getting it done. And so that Vancouver game is going to that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Denny mentioning that Foligno and Mojo were engaged tonight. They certainly were. And Johansson, I think he's going to want that one back early on in the game where he had the open net, had the opportunity to just push to the net to try to get one past Dan Vladar, Mount Vladar, as I call him, because of how just freakishly big he is. I think he's going to want that one back. But honestly, he was helping push the play for Boldy and for Eriksson Ek as well. So I take that as an optimistic sign that he is hopefully trending in the right direction. And Foligno, that goal that he scored was just disgusting in a good way. Just made that poor rookie Flames defenseman absolutely pretzel and was able to get that goal in. That was great. And so Foligno doing that and being able to get a goal, he fought. He nearly had the Gordie Howe. It was a good game for Foligno. Yes, Denny, Alex and I discussed the potential of getting dual Michelettis. The only problem, but we'll work through it, is just the lateness at which these recordings typically happen. But like I said, we will make it happen. It has already been broached, and so that's gonna happen. Although we've got a reoccurring guest who is going to be joining the show again next week, and so I don't want to spoil who that is, but you just think of the people that have joined this show that haven't been on frequently, but is going to be on for another appearance come next week. I'll tease it more when we get closer to it, but for right now, that's about as big of a tease as I'm going to give. I will give an opportunity for people to get mailbag questions in. No, Jeremy, this is not necessarily a person guest. It's a player. So that should hopefully give you an indication as to who it's going to be. A reoccurring player guest. So there's your hint. Okay, it's Duhaime. He's coming back on next week. So we'll get an opportunity for mailbag questions as we get closer. But Denny, before I wrap things up, let's hear this new idea as to bouncing off the dual Michelettis for. Ooh, okay. He just threw it in here. Bar Down Beauties, Locked On Wild, and Fanline all together at the same time at Tom Reed's. I think we have a winner here. I think we have an elite level winner idea for a future collaborative event for Minnesota Wild fans. We'll talk to the people we need to talk to make it happen. But that's a genius idea that we'll get to. We'll make it happen sometime. Just got to pull some strings to make it work. So a couple of reveals as we near an hour on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. We'll be getting Brandon Duhaime back on the air next week. We're gonna get an opportunity for people to meet up. I will. I'll keep you updated on that as we get closer. But for tonight, I'm gonna wrap it up because I got to get up early. I've got another episode to do for tomorrow because I'm just a lunatic. And so I'm going to get that episode recorded, talking more about Matt Zuccarello. But for tonight, just another fun time hanging out, breaking down another Minnesota Wild win. 4th in a row for the Minnesota Wild, 4 in a row for Hynes. K-Fan, if you're listening, you can have that one. 4 in a row for Hynes. 4 in a row for Hynes. 4 in a row for Hynes. Again, a lot of fun. So thanks for joining. Thank you to everybody for hopping into the comments. New season-long Locked On Wild postcast, and great comments from Will, from Denny, from Mike, from Jay Sullivan, from Jeremy, from just everybody that hopped into the comments section here tonight. I know it was a late one, but like I said, we're not going anywhere. So we'll continue to have you covered here as we move through the rest of the season. Join us after Thursday's game for another Locked On Wild postcast. But don't worry, we've got full coverage for you coming up throughout the week as well. So make sure if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends. Let's get those subscriber counts continuing to climb. Make sure that you drop us a like, drop us a follow, drop us a 5-star rating if you haven't already, to let us know just how much you enjoy what Locked On Wild has to offer. And we'll keep offering it with episodes, with postcasts, with pre-games, whatever you want. You can get it all here at Locked On Wild. So until our next party, until our next episode, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being part of Locked On Wild Nation. You can find all of our content and more as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.